the people who have the most peace in this period aren't making decisions based on fear. They're making decisions based on purpose.
Yep.
And those are the people that I kind of, when you have hundreds of different couples that you work with, you can kind of pick and choose, like, I want to be like this couple in that way, or I want to be like this person in that way.
I guess that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ones, I would say there's maybe a handful of them in this stage that I get to work with that I've learned a ton from. And the number one thing that I would say that they have in common would be that they're making decisions based on purpose, and they aren't making decisions based on what an Excel spreadsheet says they need to have, or what their money guide software says they need to have a little higher probability of success. It's more decisions based on purpose than it is on practical numbers and cents.
Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where happiness is more often found in the soul of someone's wealth rather than the size of it. Money, after all, is a tool. It's not the destination. Money is the fuel to advance your core values and your purpose. Join us as we share some inspiring stories, true wealth life lessons, and practical strategies to help you design a life of intention, generosity, and fulfillment. Well, welcome back, True Wealth listeners. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. In the studio again is co-hosts Nik Aamlid and Ryan Ovenden. Thanks for being here, guys.
Glad to be here.
We're working our way through the different life stages. So, and those life stages come from my book, True Wealth. Maybe a little bit backwards. We're doing the stages before the principles of, but we kind of made the commitment to do that, meet people where they're at, and then we'll just keep unpacking it. So the stage we're at today is the builders, which is 46 to 59. Neither one of you are in that quite yet, right?
Just about.
He's closer than I am.
Really close.
Yeah.
I'm past that.
Old man.
The builders is a time of refinement, responsibility, stewardship, and strategic alignment. So I got a little bit of a opening just to kind of set the parameters here. The builder stage is a pivotal chapter of the true wealth journey. A season where the people shift from striving to shaping, from accumulation to alignment, from building a life to refining it. Responsibilities are significant: aging parents, growing children, expanding careers, and complex financial realities. Yet, something deeper emerges. Builders begin asking new questions. What do I truly want? Where am I building? What am I building towards? What matters beyond success? And this stage becomes a time of intentional restructuring, tightening values, clarifying purpose, strengthening relationships, and designing systems that support a life that's approaching a life of decades ahead. Builders recognize that the future is no longer someday; it is approaching with speed. It was a blink for me, but when lived with intention, this stage becomes about preparation, alignment, and creating the foundations to leap ahead. So, wow, I got to shorten those things.
And that's when builders have a chance to blink and even think about these things, right?
Well, kind of. I was going to bring this up probably a little bit later when we were talking, but Nik gave me a really good book called Halftime by Bob Buford, and I kind of can't put the dumb thing or the great thing down. I shouldn't call it a dumb thing, but just a lot in there, because this is really that. In that book, he kind of outlines it like a football or a sporting event into 4 quarters, and the halftime is really, where you kind of realign and you reset and he goes into detail too. You don't really lose the game in the first half. You can make some mistakes, but the second half is really where you got to pay attention to a lot of the details. So,
Well, I think that's your builder's stage, right? Where that transition happens. And I think it's interesting because I'm not sure I've ever had a person in the builder's stage come in who feels comfortable with where they're at.
No, right.
And I think to me, it's been kind of two things. One, I think we talked about the juggler stage where you feel like you just can't get ahead. You're almost drowning. And so they're coming off the heels of that stage. And so they feel really behind. But you also get this comparison culture that we have, this whole keeping up with the Joneses.
Yep.
And there's just this constant feeling of, we don't have enough, I'm behind. And so the tendency is, I got to take everything I have and start stashing it away. And this is really where I think you start to see the power behind what am I building for, and where
Absolutely.
people start to accumulate maybe more than what they ever thought they would need
Yep.
because they're so fearful of how far behind they might be. So I think rerouting
Oh,
in this
absolutely.
stage is huge.
And Bifford goes into that in a little bit detail. It's kind of that you just crossed over midlife, so
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out, where am I going? What's ahead of me? There's a little element of panic. If people did the earlier stages right, hopefully now they get a sense of moving from success to significance, but that's fewer than the norm.
Yep.
More people are in that stage. So what things have you witnessed, either when you talked about that a little bit, but either a newfound direction or a reshift or a refocus? Is any client relationship, and we got to always watch confidentiality, so I don't want to disclose that, but anything pop in mind for either one of you? Brian?
Yeah, I mean, we deal with, I would say the majority of our clients are in this stage or the later stages, where we're thinking about end of life, estate plan type of conversation. This stage, we deal with a lot of people that are in the middle of this, and I think I'm trying to think through people that I've seen do this really successfully, and I'm going to ask you the same question back. Who have you found to be the most successful in this period? But one of the things that I've seen is that the people who have the most peace in this period aren't making decisions based on fear. They're making decisions based on purpose.
Yep.
And those are the people that I kind of, when you have hundreds of different couples that you work with, you can kind of pick and choose, like, I want to be like this couple in that way, or I want to be like this person in that way.
I guess that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ones, I would say there's maybe a handful of them in this stage that I get to work with that I've learned a ton from. And the number one thing that I would say that they have in common would be that they're making decisions based on purpose, and they aren't making decisions based on what an Excel spreadsheet says they need to have, or what their money guide software says they need to have a little higher probability of success. It's more decisions based on purpose than it is on practical numbers and cents. Those are the people that have the most peace that I've worked with.
Well, I think you take the definition of the group, the builders, and the whole idea that coming off the juggler stage where you're just trying to keep your head above water and you're just trying not to drown, but this stage, the whole question becomes, what are you actually building? Right. And that's where that blueprinting process, I think, comes into to place, where it's, if you don't know what you're building, I think it's a Yogi Berra quote that if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there?
Yep.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
And so, understanding what that target is, and I think the tendency is to just think that, well, I just need more. I just need more because I don't have it now and I want it, and I think other people have it. And that's a tough it's a critical stage of life to redefine what your value system is and truly what you want to build. And so I think taking the time to pause and understand, what the value system is, what the purpose behind it is.
I'm going to expand on that a little bit, because I think there's a reason that's why we work with more people at that age. When they're younger, they kind of have all the answers. Then they get to the juggler stage. I don't have the time. And now they take a breath and go, oh, shoot.
Where am I?
So they naturally seek out advisors because there is a little bit of an element of panic.
And there's more to lose, too, and less time to recover.
Ideally, though, we should be working with the younger as well.
Right.
But the younger generation of today versus when I was in that stage has a different set of tools, opportunities. They are a little bit more of the generation X, Y. They are a little bit millennials. I'm going to do this myself a little bit. So I think they'll too come around, but there's a reason, because all of a sudden, I think that's a big responsibility of ours, is to get them to start thinking about alignment, not just accumulation. What are we building for? I think it's a great point, Nick. What's on our landscape? What do we want this thing to look like?
Well, I think to add to that too, this is the stage where the question, how much is enough,
Yeah.
starts to become really important to ask yourself and to answer for yourself. How much is enough?
Yeah.
Because this is the stage where I've found the people who have the least amount of peace are the ones who say, well, I've got this much in my savings account, but this much would feel better. You know,
Right.
I've got $10,000 in my savings, but 20 would feel better. I've got 100,000 in my savings, but 150 would feel better. And so stopping ourselves and forcing ourselves to ask ourselves the hard questions, how much is enough?
Yep.
Are the next stewards of these dollars prepared to handle whatever I'm going to leave behind them? Do I have clear documentation for that matches my my goals for what I would like to see happen to all of my stuff if I were to die in this stage? Because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
The ones that I also see who have probably a little bit more accelerated stress, it depends on their family makeup. Those that you just came out of juggling your own family, you get to the builder stage, and now you have a different layer that starts to appear because you may have to be dealing with aging parents, and you're dealing with a younger generation, your own children that are coming up behind you, and you're trying to figure out your own. That also is where there's some anxiety.
Well, and we talk about all the different directions that the jugglers have to go, but here too, it's like you maybe have fewer little expenses that are going out to the kids all the time for their sports and activities and all this stuff, but the expenses that you have are concentrated, like highly expensive ones. And so you're talking college, you're talking weddings, you're talking, do you have a desire to help your kids buy their first house? What's your responsibility with aging parents if they haven't done
so
planning themselves?
What do you think gives more stress at this point in time? Is it money? Is it time? Is it energy? Is it identity? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Is there one that jumps out that you run across? For me, I think I still run across a lot of people at that stage where time feels crunched. But that could just be life today.
Yeah.
For me, what was tougher going through that stage was a changing of identity. That was kind of hard for me. It really, I think it still is. It's a period of transition and peace, but the money was not as big of a worry at that point, mainly probably because I had started a little bit earlier. Yeah, I should have done more. I mean, I can be a testimony of that. Sometimes they say the man that sells shoes has the worst pair in town. Well, sometimes that's true for advisors as well. We're so busy helping other people, you kind of have to look internally. But do you see one of those that comes out, or are they all pretty much equal?
I guess for me, it's the money and the identity one is closely tied, because I think there is this element that you've poured so much into family at that point that do you to an extent lose a little bit of your own identity through the chaos of the previous phases. And so there's this whole idea of wondering who I am and was created to be, and what am I supposed to be doing, and what am I building towards? And it's like my favorite definition of true wealth we've talked about a lot, but it's a proper balance of your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, and your money ties into all of it. And that to me is this stage. It's figuring out identity, but a lot of times that takes money.
Yep. Have either one of you had? I got a story I can share with this as well, but I'm curious if you've experienced this as well. Have you had someone come in at this stage totally panicked, thinking I am so far behind? And yet when you took them through the process, surprisingly, they were much better off than they thought?
I mean, almost always people are better off than they think they are based on some of our calculations. But a lot of that has to do with expenses too. I think we tend to overdo it in how conservative we run our numbers on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we overdo it on how many expenses we think we're going to have to replace, and we underdo it on how much performance we can get in the market. We all do all these things to be cautious, and that's good, but it also puts a little more stress on you. And going back to that question, how much is enough? it just makes that number a little bit higher every time we move a little more conservative. So I think I think fear has a real impact on our ability to experience this thing we called true wealth.
Absolutely.
Especially in this stage of life, because like I said earlier, there's more stuff going on. There's a higher number of assets than we're used to. We probably have more income in this stage than we did when we were in our 30s. And so it just feels like there's more to lose.
Yeah.
I'll say often, like, there's power in known information. Like, it's the unknown that creates chaos. And one specifically, they came in almost defeated, talking about their plan to work to 70 and why they felt like they had to do that and all these different things. And you kind of start looking at it and you're going, I think you could probably do this today if you wanted to. And so we go through the whole planning process and basically go through the plan and present known information, and they retired within a year.
Sure.
And they've gone on trips they wanted to go on. They've done projects at the house that they wanted to do, all simply because we showed them a path to using what they had built.
Right.
So many times people just get so caught up into this whole I've got to build. Yeah. And it's that they understand. They understand I got to take this and I got to put it over here and set it aside and don't touch it.
Right.
That's a really hard concept to get to where they have to start processing through, well, how can I actually use this now to do what I want to?
We'll look at that even further when we get to the next stage.
Yeah.
But that's very real at that point in time.
How about your story you had to share?
Well, there's always been conflict in the world at times. We got the Iran situation going on right now. Global tensions. Last year we had Liberation Day and tariffs was a big deal. So there's always been things that will rock some people's confidence in where they're at. Well, this goes back to, I hate dating myself so bad, but this goes back to the decade of the 90s, okay? The last century. So I had a gentleman, of course I started in 87, so this gentleman came in, he was one of my earlier relationships. We laid out a plan, how much he was going to save, how much he was going to put away, and he was very, very diligent and actually probably saved more than what the plan even called for. And his targeted income needs was really less than what he originally. So we were stress testing it pretty heavy. Well, in 2000, we had this thing called Y2K for those of you that.
Yeah. I still have toilet paper. Just kidding.
No, but
you're not.
Well, sometimes when I say that word, it's like I wasn't born then yet. I run across people that I was like, man, I'm old.
Yeah.
But no, Y2K happened. So, and we went through 2000, 2001, 2002, and almost part of 3, where the markets went down or sideways. They went nowhere. And if they went anywhere, it was down. And this gentleman came in really irate. We hadn't talked for a little bit. He was busy trying in the builder stage, and he came in and said, I'm really disappointed. I plan on retiring here in the next little while, and I clearly can't. I've lost this much money. So I said, well, let's take a look at this. So we ran through the numbers, and I said, okay, so if I started sending you a check, and we use the 4% theory, if I started sending you a check for this amount, would you be okay? Oh, shoot, I live like a king. That's way more than I need. It's like, okay, so quit. It was just quiet.
Really?
Like, yeah, really. And actually, he went on to work about 4 or 5 more years after that. So that's a little bit of a switch from your story. But all of a sudden, he had gotten to the point, and I think this happens a lot too. People who are approaching that next stage get to a point where there's a big number. I hate my job. You have got to get me out of this. And they're just like, I'm doing this because I know it's too late for me to do anything different. So I'll do this, but I got to quit. But all of a sudden, once he knew he had enough money, work wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Because now he got to focus on the things he did like about it, and it wasn't so much about hating what he was doing and feeling like he was trapped.
Yeah, when you know you don't have to be there,
Right.
it completely changes the mindset. It's
Yep.
waking up every morning feeling, I have to go to work again.
So it's being responsible in crunching those numbers and just what you're trying to accomplish from that time. But the builder stage, is that really important time of alignment refocus, resetting, things you thought you wanted to have put in place. Other things that come to mind with relationships that you've worked with for this stage that we should just highlight as we start unpacking what this phase or stage is all about.
Well, so I guess I was going to turn it back to you and say, I mean, you've been doing this for 30 plus years.
38.
Nick,
Call
Nick,
out
that
on
was
us.
rude.
I was going to let you finish.
That
the
makes you
answer.
39,
Yeah.
40-ish.
Yeah.
He was born into it.
2027 will be 40 years
Born
from
into
me,
it.
so next year.
But you've been blessed to work with a lot of people who have trusted you through this phase of life. And so what are some practical things that if you look at it and say the ones that I have found navigate this phase of life the most successfully, have done X? Like, what are the things that stick out to you?
They really aren't panicked. They really are more reality checks. I just want to know where I'm at. Is what I'm doing enough for where I think I'm headed? Because really, and I think I said this in one of the other episodes. We like to think what we do is really complex, and we can keep telling ourselves that, but it really isn't that difficult. If you're not on track, there's really only 4 things you can do. You got to save more money. You have to delay the day when the goal has to be in. You have to lower the expectation of what that goal may be, or you got to take on more risk. And if it's not like you can do all 4 of those, because if you're risk averse, that may not even be an option. Okay, well, now we have to save more, or we have to talk about the expectations, or a slight delay, or maybe it's not full retirement, but it's transitioning to part of it. So the difficult ones are like, well, none of those are options. Okay, well, then you're going to be uneasy, right? And taking on more risk isn't necessarily my preference either. I want to make sure when we're building plans that there's an element of confidence in them that to get rid of that panic. But the interesting thing to me, and this is a hard diagram if you're not on the YouTube channel, so if you're listening, but interestingly enough, and saw this diagram, years ago, but life forms a smile. So if you think about it, when you're in your 18s, if you think of your smile on your face, you're at the left-hand side of the smile. You're up. It goes down a little bit during the late launchers, the jugglers, the builders, and then it starts to come back up to the right side of your face. So life kind of forms a smile when you think about it financially.
Yeah.
So
I really like that, because that's the opposite of the over the hill concept, where life makes a frown, right?
It does. Well, it changes a little bit, but it is a smile. It's not a frown. I mean, it isn't. Well, for those people whose life financially is a frown, where they are spending their euphoria and then they're going to come back
Right.
to reality, that's different. But
Yep.
for most people, it forms a smile, which always just kind of makes me feel good. And there is that point where you're on the uphill side of this. I'm going to really unpack this when we get to the next stage. But life needs to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's figuring this out. But again, you get back to responsibility. Prosperity seekers have a tough time with this because they are panicked. They are, is it enough? And I don't care how much they had it, it's not going to be enough of that fear stage. But if people have that sense of responsibility, they are the sweet spot for who lives a life of true wealth. So if you can get them focused in on, well, what are the things that are important to you? Let's figure out how to have those things happen. That's always the conversation I have, even with those people who say, I hate my job. Okay, well, if money was not an issue, what would you want to do? And then when they tell you that, okay, let's figure out how to do that today. Why are we going to wait till you can't climb a flight of stairs to now say I'm going to go enjoy what I want to do? So
the reality of this stage too is that not all is lost. Like there's still time to make course corrections, before a lot of those goals that people have in mind are coming. Like I think the tendency is to think that we're hosed. We haven't started until now, or we haven't done what we thought we needed to do. And You know, it's like so I use the analogy of a sailboat sometimes, where it's like very rarely is a sailboat, sailing in a straight line from point A to point B.
Right.
You got to kind of play the wind and navigate and shift, and as you get closer, your course corrections are less, but there's still time to make course corrections.
Absolutely. And it's how you set the sail
Mm-hmm.
is whether you can catch the wind or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an awesome analogy, because sometimes it's just let's make sure your sail is set right.
Yep.
And so for listeners, I've got a couple, but I'd like to just tap into your resources as well. But if you had this person came in and they were anxious, what would be the first two things you would tell them to do that they should look at?
Number one thing I would do is say we gotta just build a plan. Like let's just confirm or deny where your anxiety is coming from.
Yep.
Because there has been a lot of times where people come in anxious, and you actually help them process through all the information, and they take a deep breath and go, "Oh, well, that's refreshing."
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing I would do.
Well,
is you
I
just
was
gotta look at it.
amazed. Even though some people get paychecks, they really don't stop and think, how much am I actually making?
Right.
Mhm.
And then they also panic a little bit from the standpoint they think, well, if I'm making $60,000 a year, why does it feel like I'm tight? Well, they're not taking into account they're probably saving into their 401k. They're probably doing some other benefits in there. So it's not like that income we necessarily need to replace.
Yeah.
The house is part of that spending. Well, that will probably go away.
Yeah.
So I always think the two things you need to check is, do you know what you're actually making?
Yeah.
And do you know what you're actually spending?
Mhm.
I hate the word budget, but that's we talked about this too, this whole live, give, grow thing. I think getting people to sit down and just analyzing where's the money going,
Mhm.
and do I know where that is? Because it always amazes me, and I've seen other statistics that back this up as well, that the average family can identify $300 to $500 a month. They don't know where it's going. Candy bars for me, so those hidden expenses where you're spending cash and not tracking.
Yeah.
Let's get a handle on what are you actually spending, not because it's a hand slap moment. That's not what we're trying to figure out. We got to know what the target is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the hardest ones are, I don't know. And okay, well, should we just plug in this number? Yeah. But if that number isn't right, now we're shooting for something that may not be a good reality check too.
Yep.
So what are you making and what are you spending?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And starting with that, then you can lay a plan out. Do we have excess, or are there things that we should look to trim?
Right.
If a person eats out absolutely every night, and we're not really asking them, there are choices in everything we do. We don't like to tell people you have to make some adjustments or some cuts, but you got to get to that realization where, is this sustainable and realistic? So what am I making and what am I spending? Ryan, you got anything that jumps out?
The first thing that comes to mind when we receive these calls, because this is our job, is to help talk people through as a third party, an unbiased third party, talk through making good financial decisions. And ultimately that's probably where we as advisors can provide the most value to people, is helping people to make good decisions when they don't feel like making what would be a good decision, right? So when we get these calls, we get these all the time. The last one that I took, and I'm trying to put together just on the spot here, I'll bet you the last half a dozen calls that I've taken from someone who's fearful. My 401k is going down in value. I'm pretty close to retirement.
Right.
What should I do?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, there are two things. Number one, and this is going to sound pious, but okay, Philippians 4:6 says, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, in prayer and petition, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all of our understanding will guard your hearts and minds. So if, as a believer, as a believing advisor, that's where I would start people is, have you prayed about this and given it to God? If you've built your foundation on this firm foundation that financially I know that all of it belongs to Him anyway, why wouldn't I trust Him when I'm in my 50s as much as I trusted Him when I was in my 30s?
Right.
Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you can be an unwise steward with your finances and just throw it all in a cryptocurrency and hope it goes up.
Right.
We want to be wise stewards too. So the second thing is, and the thing I've seen most in common with people who call in because they're afraid of what's happening in the stock market, you mentioned, there's always conflict. There's always going to be something. Every year is going to have its own thing that the world is coming to an end. Everything's crashing.
Right.
Nothing's ever going to be the same. We've heard this every single year as long as we've been alive. But the reason they call, I've seen, is because they don't have enough in their first bucket. We teach the bucketing theory. They don't have enough cash on hand to be able to sustain longer duration downturns in the market.
Correct.
And so they get very afraid of, well, what happens if my $1 million in my 401k goes to 500,000 like it did in 2008 for some people. And the biggest fear there is, what if I don't have enough? Well, if you have enough in your checking and savings and CDs, you can sustain a downturn in the market. And yeah, we probably shouldn't be invested in something that can lose 50% of its value, but there still needs to be a portion of that $1 million 401k in something long-term like that.
Right. The buckets are huge.
Right. The buckets make a big difference. And so if you don't know what the bucket theory is, or you don't have money separated in buckets, you need to come in and talk to us. That activity, just going through that activity with us, is going to help provide some clarity and some peace that you wouldn't have otherwise, just realizing what money you have where.
I think,
I was going to say two things for me. There's a reason I use the name builders, because no one that I'm aware of has Menards or Lowe's or the local lumberyard drop off a load of lumber and say, I'm going to build a house, with no idea of what it looks like. They have no blueprint to follow. Now, they may have something that would be a little form of a shelter, but it's not going to turn out the way they want it to. So the builder stage requires an element of discipline and planning in order to make it work. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons it's there. The other thing for me that I have witnessed a lot is the people who have the most anxiety are those who have the most risk in their portfolio.
Right.
Just because they allocated it a certain way and, well, it was good then, and they haven't changed it, or they're changing it so often they're not letting the investments be the investments.
Yeah.
So that's why getting people acclimated to saying, and that's a great thing to really send people off with as well, make sure you have money in different buckets. Bucket one is your emergency funds, the funds we would go to first if you needed to replace a furnace or a car or something, or that's what we would learn to live off of. And we're going to unpack that, I think, too, on why we set a lot more aside in bucket one to help negate some of that risk level. Bucket two would be money, 3 years to 5 years and beyond. And then 7 years plus is that last bucket. Well, all your risks should be in bucket three, not one and two.
That's right.
And we find people have the same risk in all buckets, which is why they panic, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So making sure you're diversified, allocated properly, embrace the bucketing strategy. There's really a lot to do in this stage, right? It's plan, having that as well. Go ahead.
Well, my final thing, I guess I would say, is just there's got to be an element of humility at this stage too, because I think perception is something that we all are concerned about. And so people come in and they're almost embarrassed to show you where they're at. It's like we all have those things where we feel like we haven't done it well, or we haven't done it right, and it's really hard for us to communicate it. Yep. And so we kind of just bury it deep inside and don't do anything about it. And then you get to the next stage and you get stuck.
Right.
And so I think having the ability to communicate, find someone that you trust to communicate with. And from our standpoint, there's never any judgment. You can't throw anything at us that we probably haven't seen.
No.
So our job is not to judge. Our job is to help and to guide and to help you understand where you're going. So I think that's the key to me. It's just that element of humility that says, I need some help, and I just got to open up in conversation to someone who I trust can help.
Yeah, and empathy goes a long ways in there as well. I mean, fortunately, I would encourage everybody that this is supposed to be, and we try to encourage that, a judgment-free zone. I mean, when you come in, where are you? Where do you want to be? And is what you're doing going to get you there?
Yep.
And if not, let's have a conversation, not a got you or I told you so or you should have. It's all right, what do we, because you can't change that past.
Yep.
I've always been, it was one of the things, another thing my dad always instilled in me, don't worry about the things you can't control.
Yeah.
Focus all your time and energy on the things you can, and then, and don't stick your head in the sand.
Right.
I mean, if you're doing something, if you're not sure, don't say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll see where that ends up. Find somebody that you trust, like you said, that you have confidence with. Great ending advice. So any other last comments? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. Today, we spent some time unpacking or laying out what it is to be in the builder stage. Next episode we'll take a look at is most likely going to be the leaper stage, and then it's going to be self-reflection time for me. But if you have questions or concerns or comments about today's episodes, for any one of the hosts here, send your questions to info@Pinnacle Wealth. If you have specific questions or ideas for future episodes that you'd like us to unpack, send that information as well to info@Pinnacle Wealth. And make sure wherever you listen to or watch your favorite podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, whatever their format is, and share it with a friend. Make sure if you like this episode or the series that we're going through, send it to family members, coworkers, friends, because we want to expand the True Wealth Nation to people who are interested in exploring a life confidently enjoyed, one of true wealth. And why Pinnacle Wealth? Because the pinnacle of wealth is true wealth. Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon. The opinions voiced in today's True Wealth Podcast with Kevin Engbers, Nik Aamlid, and Ryan Ovenden are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendation by any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing.